back to Love Your Food. I know we very recently did a braised beef dish with the boeuf bourguignon, but this one is a little bit simpler. It's also going to be sort of a stew style, and it is braised beef short ribs. So it's going to have a lot of similarities to that other recipe, but it is much simpler, fewer steps, so let's get going with some ingredients. So here are our beef ribs. We're going to use some small potatoes, some mushrooms, much like the beef bourguignon, some carrots and some celery. We're going to use an onion, a shallot, some parsley, some green onions, some beef broth, some tomato paste, and again we're going to use some red wine, and we're going to use actually the same one we were using for the bourguignon. And we're going to start with the carrots. So this is a braised dish, so the first thing we're going to do is sort of build the braising liquid, just a nice flavorful braising liquid to put the beef in. So we're going to get started with our what is generally called mirepoix, which is carrots and celery and other aromatic vegetables. And this is going to go into the pot just to start getting it a little soft. Just to sort of get it a head start on the cooking. So we're going to put some heat on underneath a pan and get some olive oil in there. And we're going to wait until that gets nice and hot, just until it starts to shimmer a little bit. And then while we're waiting for that to happen, we'll get our onions ready. Now we're going to cut the onions a little bigger for this because we kind of want pieces of onion left at the end. And once you have the oil hot, we're going to put all of the veggies that we've chopped so far into the pot just to let them get started. So those are going to go into the pan. Definitely a little bit of salt and pepper. Good sprinkling of salt in there. A little stir just to make sure everything's got some contact with the oil and the salt. And we're just going to cover that and let those cook for a little while. Now the shallot is going to take less time. We're also going to be cutting it far smaller, so we're going to add that after everything else has had a little bit of a head start. So here comes the shallot. We're just going to chop that pretty finely. And you can see it's much smaller pieces than the onions or carrots, so it will cook much faster. Those are mostly going to disappear in the end result. They're going to cook into the broth. So give everything a good stir, make sure it's well combined, and cover it again. And once it's sort of about part way through, we're going to add our tomato paste. And this is just going to give everything a little richness, that nice tomato flavor. The tomato paste is a great concentrate of that. And you're going to give that a stir just to make sure it's all well combined once again. And then once that is well combined and everything is nicely coated with the oil and the tomato paste, we're going to toss in some fresh herbs. So we have some thyme and a fresh bay leaf. We're just going to put that in there, some nice aromatics. And while that's cooking together, we are going to slice our beef. So if you get nice thick rib slices like this, and the ribs are well oriented for this, we like to cut it so that each rib is its own piece. It just makes it easier to serve at the end of the whole cooking process. So we're going to cut each of these into its own serving piece. And then a generous salt and pepper on one side. And we're using kosher salt for this, and again in the ingredients list below in the description will be all of our amounts. And a nice generous coating of fresh ground black pepper as well. And then we're going to put these into our very hot cast iron pan. So we actually preheated this in the oven for a little while, and then we put it on a pretty full heat on top of the stove. And we're just going to get those nicely seared to get that nice Maillard reaction, to get that nice sear on the outside. While that's happening, we're going to give everything a stir in our pot to make sure nothing's sticking to the bottom. And that seems to be going just fine. You can see the onions are getting cooked, the celery is getting a little more transparent. So this is a good time to add in the beef broth. So we're going to add just an entire box of this beef broth that we're using. And again, if you're using homemade beef broth, the same amount will apply. And then we're going to turn over our beef. So this is our nice ribs. You've got some great color on the first side already. And with a really hot cast iron like this, it doesn't hurt too much to crowd the pan, so it's fine if you've got a lot of these to put in there. We did this in two shifts, essentially. When the first one was done on the front and back, we decided we wanted to get just that nice sear on all the sides. So we're going to stack it up on the side over here, but we don't want that nice foam to burn. We want to deglaze that into our gravy later, so we're going to cover these with some new fresh pieces. Everything's a little bit crushed together in there, but that's fine. Cast iron does not care. We're just trying to get that nice color on all sides of this beef. So once that nice sear is on all sides, we're going to start adding these right into the pot with the vegetables and the broth. And now's a great time for us to add our wine. So we're going to add the wine far less than we added to the beef bourguignon, which was basically a full bottle. Here we're only adding a little bit. Again, the amounts are going to be in the description below. And then as the remainder of the beef is finished searing, we're just going to toss that in there. You want to make sure that everything's just beneath the liquid. So now we have all this amazing flavor here. We are going to pour off some of the fat. So we're just going to pour off some of the grease from the bottom there. But the little brown crispy bits at the bottom there, we're going to deglaze that with a little bit of water. And we're just going to scrape those up a little bit, because that is a lot of flavor. Sorry for the steam on the lens there, and we're just going to add that right into our broth. So there we go. So now everything is in our pot. We are just going to give that a little stir, make sure it's all beneath the liquid. And then this is going to go in the oven. Now this is a low and slow cooking process. So we're going to pop that into the oven at 225, and we're just going to start it with about an hour, and it's going to be a long time cooking at a low temperature. So after the hour is done, we're going to take that out to take a look at it and see what's going on. You can see we did crack it for a little while, so it wasn't completely covered. And give everything a nice stir just to make sure it's all cooking well. Now is a great time to add the potatoes. So you want these to be cleaned, but not peeled. Now, once you've added the potatoes, great idea to add some salt, because starchy things like potatoes definitely eat up a lot of salt out of your dish. They will suck it up, and you will lose that flavor profile that comes from well salted food. So once you've added the potatoes, you're going to mostly lid it. Again, you want to just leave it cracked, because we're going to reduce that braising liquid just a little bit and back in the oven. So we're going to keep it at the same temperature, but now we're going to put it in there for a little bit longer. So that's going to go in there for another 2 hours at that low temperature. And then we're going to take a look. So if you feel like it's not cooked enough, you can always put it in for more time, but don't raise the temperature. So you can see there's been some fat that's risen to the top, and a little bit of protein is sort of coagulated on the top there. So now's a great time to skim all of that off. So we're just going to grab a ladle here. We're putting it on heat because we do want it to stay hot while we're doing this. And yeah, just a great opportunity to get rid of some of that fat and some of that protein that has come up to the top. And just give it a little skim on the top there. So once we finish that, we're just going to test everything to make sure it's all cooked. So you give the potato a little squeeze with the spoon, and give the beef a little poke there. You can see it's very soft, sort of starting to fall apart. That is great. This is just about where you want everything. So we're just going to finish the cooking here as far as the braising of the beef. So we're going to take everything out of our pot. All the solid bits. So grab your potatoes. The potatoes are nice. They're well cooked, but they're not mushy or anything. They're just nicely al dente. So once you've got everything out of the pot, we're going to take the braising liquid and we're going to strain it out a little bit. So we're going to try and remove some of the solids from this. So give that a little bit of a shake. And you don't want to throw away the solids. We're going to add that back into the bowl with all of the others, the bits of braised beef and the carrots and potatoes, because again, there's a lot of flavor in there. It's onions and shallots and celery and carrots. It's really fantastic stuff. But now we're left with this beautiful, rich, dark gravy. Now you remember with the beef bourguignon, we actually did a butter sauce with this. We did a monté à beurre. First, we're going to reduce this somewhat. So we've put this over heat in a pot, and we're just going to turn that up sort of to a medium heat until it's good and simmering, and then we're just going to let that reduce for a while. We want to concentrate the flavors and give it that sort of nice unctuous mouthfeel that you get from reduced sauces. While that's happening is a great time to get our mushrooms ready. So we're just going to quarter these. And pop those into a pan with some butter. Give that a little flip. And we're just going to let those brown a little bit. We want to get some nice color on there, some nice flavor on those. A little dash of salt and a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. And just let those cook for a little while. Once again, we just want a nice little bit of color on there. While that's happening, we're going to get the green onions and the parsley ready. So we're just going to give these a little chop. This is going to go into the gravy before we serve. You can reserve a little bit for a garnish as well, but this is actually going to go into the sauce. So a nice little chop on the parsley. You want it pretty fine. You don't want large pieces of parsley, and certainly you don't want large pieces of stem in your final product. And get that a nice little chop. And Chef Caleb's actually going to slide some of that aside to save the garnish. So once that's cooked, we're going to add a little bit of brandy. If you're using gas, you can get a little flare like that. This was actually cognac we're using. Brandy and cognac are pretty traditional for this. And then we're going to add some of that reduced gravy from the sauce, or from the braising liquid, to make the sauce here. We just want to make sure this all cooks together a little bit, so we're going to put that, we're going to keep that over heat and let it reduce a little bit more with the mushrooms in it. We're going to add our greens, so here's the green onions and most of the parsley. And we're just going to give that a little stir to make sure everything is combined. And then it wouldn't be French food without a little bit more butter, so some nice cold butter in there, and just stir it until it is well combined and all of the butter has melted. And that's just going to thicken everything. It's going to give it this beautiful silky mouthfeel, this excellent rich flavor. It's really, really nice. So for presentation, we're just going to put a little bit of each thing on the plate. It sort of works to assemble a plate of this for your guests. So we're going to just take some of our potatoes and carrots. You can see we've left all of those bits of onion and celery in there as well, because just so much flavor, really, really delicious. It may not look so nice yet, but once you add that sauce, it's all going to be beautiful. So there you go, just some of your veggies and potatoes, a few of those ribs. You can see we have those nice individual ribs there. And then we're just going to top that with some of this beautiful mushroom butter sauce using the braising liquid. We're just going to ladle that on top. So you have that beautiful tender beef, you have those soft but still slightly al dente potatoes, those well-cooked carrots, those nice browned mushrooms, just amazing. A beautiful plate of great textures and flavors. Again, extremely rich, very, very flavorful, super delicious winter dish for a braised beef ribs. So we hope you like this recipe. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in the comments below. And remember to love your food.